Okay, this is significant figures. So if you're going to round to one significant figure, that just means give the most significant number, but make it sound correct. So in the first one, the 3,000 would be the most significant. So your answer would just be 3,000. The only thing you have to check is check the number that immediately follows the 3, and if it's a large number, you would need to round up. So if that was 3,750, you would need to say the answer was 4,000. Okay, so the most significant is the one that represents the highest value. So if it's one significant figure, just one digit, but you're allowed to add in extra zeros to make the place value sound correct. Okay, this one is 480. So the answer is going to be 400 or 500. Which is it closer to? It's closer to 500. So how you can check quickly is just check the number that immediately follows the first significant figure, and if it's large, round it up. So we round the 4 up by one place to 5, so 500. 26.4 to one significant figure. There's no need to put decimals in if it's 0.0. You don't need to add in extra zeros after a decimal point. So the answer is just going to be 20 or 30. It's going to be 30 because the 6 is large, so it makes you round up the 2. So 26.4 to one significant figure would be 30. Okay, two significant figures. That means give the first two, so the 4 and the 9, but check the third in case it's going to make you round up. But 3 is small, so the answer's the 4, 9, but the 4 represents 400. So it's really important you put that extra 0 at the end so it still represents 400 when you write it down. So 490. This one is 1,654. So it's going to be 1,600 or 1,700. Just look at the third digit. The third digit is a 5, which is high. So we're going to round it up to 1,700. The last one, 3.82. To two significant figures. 3 is the most significant, and then the decimal point goes in, and the 8 is the second most significant. And we don't need to round up because it's followed by a 2, and a 2 is small. Okay, let's move on to 3 significant figures. So the first 3. So 457, and it's followed by a small number, so keep the 457 in, but add that extra 0 in so that the 4 still represents 4,000. 1, 2, 3, but it's followed by a 5, which is a big number, so it's going to be 1, 2, 4. Now that represents 12,358, so it should still represent 12,000. So we'll need to add on 2 zeros at the end of that. This one, 3 significant figures, 86.9 are your 3 most significant, but 9 needs rounded up because it's followed by a 5. So it's actually going to affect the 6 as well, because the 6.9 would become the 7.0. So 87.0. And the last one here, 173, or are you going to round it up? No, you're just going to keep it as 173, because 4 is a small number. It's not big enough to round up. There's no need to put the decimal point in, because this represents 100, just as it should, and the 7 represents the 70, and the 3 represents the 3 single units. So we're all good. So only add in the extra zeros if they're necessary. They were necessary in this one because we needed to give 3 significant figures. And the third one happened to be a 0, even though it was after the decimal point, so it's really important that you show it. The other thing you can be asked for is you could be shown a number and asked how many significant figures did you round that to. So if you're ever asked that, let's have a look. So how many significant figures do you think I've been asked to give my answer to if I leave my answer as that? The answer would be 2 significant figures. If I said to you 17.3, I must have been asked for 3 significant figures. If I said to you 0.098, I must have been asked for 2 significant figures. Zeros at the start don't count for significant figures around decimals. So if you're ever asked for 2 significant figures, it will only start after the 0.0 or any extra zeros that were there in front of the other digits. So just bear that in mind as well. And let me think of another one. 5.460. If I'd given you that as an answer, I must have been asked for 4 significant figures because there's no need to show that 0. So I must have specifically been asked for all 4 of them. Okay, I just wanted to go over some examples with zeros at the start so that you can do those as well. So remember what I said, the zeros at the start don't count as significant, so 5 would be the most significant. Okay, so to one significant figure, it would just be 0.005. The 5 is followed by a 4, which is small, so we don't need to round up. The second one, 0.0. Now is it a 3 or a 4? It's a 4, because 3 is followed by a 9. This one, we have 4 zeros after the decimal point, and then the number 8. That would be the most significant, and no need to round it because it's just followed by a 2. Okay, 2 significant figures. So the first 2 significant would be 5 and 6. Just remember to put those zeros in so the number sounds correct. But I'm going to change that 6 to a 7 because it's immediately followed by an 8. On the next one, just pop all the zeros in first before you start, and then it's just 2, 3. The 4 is not big enough to round up, so it stays as a 3, but don't round it. And lastly, rounding this one to 3 significant figures, the 198 needs rounded up because it's followed by a 6, so it's going to be 0.00199. And that's our video on significant figures.